So our event is coming to an end. So let's introduce our last session, the Q&A session. So we do receive a lot of questions from you guys, and we also receive a lot of hi from you. So if you haven't sent us a message, or if you haven't sent us your questions, please feel free to drop in them to the Q&A box. And you're free to just let us know where you're from, or your current region, or your current countries. Okay, so we have picked up some questions to ask our presenter today. So just allow me to introduce, just right next to me, Professor Kondo, Professor Adachi, Professor Lee, and our student, Melissa and Giovanni. So I will first pick up one question for each of them to answer. So let's see. Let me pick up a question for our professor. So maybe Professor Kondo, would you answer this question? What kind of student does the Faculty of Science and Technology looking for? Is there any specific abilities or characters required?
Okay, so thank you very much for the question. So let me talk a little bit about myself. So research topics of my research subject is called biophysical chemistry. So I'm interested in biology, life, living organisms. But for understanding a living organism, you have to understand chemical compounds and materials in your body. And how to analyze, you need several methods based on physics. So you need all sciences. However, probably in high school, you learn physics, chemistry, biology separately. And some of you may like physics but dislike biology or vice versa. But for tackling the issue related to, for example, sustainable development goal, you really need integrated knowledge and skills of physics, biology, chemistry, and mathematics and informatics, right? So you don't have to learn right now, but in university, please don't hesitate to learn many different subjects. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Professor Kondo. So this is very important, especially for those who are thinking to apply to the Faculty of Science and Technology. Okay, so let's go to our next question. I would like to pick up a question maybe for our student, Melissa. So we got questions from our audience. They would like to know what's a typical day is like for you, and what do you do when you're not in a class or maybe on the weekends? Could you answer the question for us?
Okay, sure. Thank you very much for the question. So for me, my typical day really varies each semester. Really depends on which class I'm taking. But but typically, like I will wake up early in the morning around 7 a.m. and then I'll have my breakfast, make my breakfast at home. And then since I live pretty far, I live in Soshiga International House, so it's like 1 hour commute from the campus. So like usually I leave like an hour before if I have class, an hour and a half before if I have class. For example, if I have class at 9 a.m., I'll leave around like 8 or something like that. And I'll usually like, because in my senior year, usually I'll arrive on campus around 11 a.m. and then do my experiments. And then I really love staying on like in the campus. So I'll have my lunch on campus, usually at the cafeteria, and then I'll stay on campus until like 5 or 6 p.m. or sometimes until 7 to like work on my assignments if I have some assignments, or like do some readings. And then after that, I'll leave. Usually, typical Sophia students, I think mostly we leave campus around 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. So, and then after that, around if I leave the campus around 7 p.m., I'll arrive in the dorm around 8 or 8:30, and then sometimes I'll work out a little bit and then make my dinner, and then I will take quick shower and then prepare for tomorrow, and then went to bed around 11 or 12, something like that. That's the typical day. And if I don't have class, usually I love coming to campus and just stay in my lab, or I will spend time doing a part-time job, or like hang out with my friends during the weekend. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. So it seems like the student in the Faculty of Science and Technology, they also spend a lot of time in the laboratory, even when they're without any class. Okay. So let's go to our third questions. Let me pick up a question for our professor. Maybe Professor Adachi can help us answering this next question. So Professor Adachi, our audience would like to know that how are students involved in research activities and projects with their professors?
Okay. Thank you very much for the question. Usually, each student has their own research team, and they conduct research on their own, as well as through discussion with other students or professors. Sometimes through experiments and calculation together. Once the student have got the research results, they present their findings in domestic and international conferences. If their finding is excellent, they write a research paper and publish it in the world. Through these activities, the student improve their research and thinking skills, learn to conduct research in team, and demonstrate their abilities in society after the graduation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Adachi. Okay, so we are receiving more and more questions. So let me just keep going forward. So next question, I would like to ask Giovanni. So we got questions about whether you have had any language barrier after coming to Japan or any culture shocks. If you had overcome these, how did you overcome these situations?
Thank you so much for the question. Yes, of course. As I mentioned before, like in our presentation, I'm from East Timor, and English is not my first language. My first language is Tetun and also Portuguese. So after coming to Japan, not only Japanese is a language barrier, but also English, because as you know, like when you study English, just in a classroom, it's totally different from like living in a country where you need to like use English in your everyday life, and also your classes like in university is like totally different. So obviously like the language barrier is like there, and also the Japanese. I didn't study Japanese before I came to Japan, so I started learning Japanese when I came to Sophia. So I think I took 2 courses like in my first year, and I learned Japanese. But at the beginning it was really hard because like I need to come in like outside of although my program is in English, but like outside of my classes I need to communicate with others, and sometimes like I go to the restaurant or like I need to go somewhere, so all of the directions and everything is written in Japanese, and I couldn't read kanji and I couldn't read it, so sometimes I get lost. So yeah, that's like my experience. But other than that, there are also like some actions, like small actions. For example, like I didn't know how to use chopstick. I'm sorry, it's embarrassing, but yeah, I did. In my home country, we didn't use chopstick. We use spoon and fork to eat. So something like new to me. And also like the climate in my home country, it's tropical weather. So like we have summer all year, but in Japan we have like all different seasons. So I need to get used to like winter, autumn, or spring, which is like very cold, even though like for some of my friends they feel like it's okay, but for me it's really cold. And also other than that, I think transportation system. So in my home country we also like didn't have trains, so at the beginning it was like something new to me. I need to get used to it. And then I still remember my very first day of taking the train to campus. I think I almost cried because like it was very packed and crowded. Everyone is like squeezing, so like you can get into the train. So because like I had a very early morning class at that time. So yeah, I think those are like the cultural shock that I experienced. And I think to overcome those cultural shock, the first thing that I would like to say is like to learn or like to learn more about the local culture and also history. So like you are able to be aware of like what is happening in your surroundings and get to understand why is it so, or also like make friends so that, and be curious. Like if you see something, don't just say like, oh okay, it's okay, but maybe like if you have some friends, you can ask like, oh, why is it like this, or why is it like that, so you're able to understand their culture and then like help you to adjust your life in Japan, or like not only in Japan, but I'm sure like in any other country, like it's better for you to like learn what's happening there, or like read articles, or like Google Google it, and then yeah, I'm sure like it will really helpful for you and make friends. It's one of the things that can help you overcome the cultural shock in new countries. So yeah, that's my answer.
Okay, thank you, Giovanni. I believe this is a very important question that many audiences that they want to know. Okay, so for our next questions, I would like to ask Professor Lee, because Professor Lee has just performed a experiment to us. So here is this question. So what's the balance between in-class work and practical application in the Faculty of Science and Technology?
Okay, sorry. Okay, thank you for the question. And yeah, I think they're both very important for the student in the Faculty of Science and Technology. And like the students in this major, they need to both learn the fundamental principles, and also it's very important for for deepen understanding. They need to practice. They need to do experiment, and as also already talked in Professor Kondo's presentation, and you can see like for the first year students, there are some sorry, there are some basic. I'm very sorry. There are some basic biology and basic chemistry and basic physics. And so also we are the students will have experience and access of basic science. Okay. So as for the students in the Department of Engineering and Applied Science, and there are some special labs for the Engineering and Applied Science Lab 1 and 2, and also Green Engineering Lab 3. So I will say that like in Sophia University, their course or well balanced their like basic principle, basic knowledge, and the application, the practice. So you can learn both very well in this faculty, the science of technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Lee. Okay, so we actually just got this one new question from our audience, and I believe this question is addressed to Melissa. So our audience would like to know more about doing part-time job in Japan. So Melissa, you have just mentioned that you're doing part-time job. Would you like to share more with the audience?
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you very much for the question. So I'll say like most commonly like in Japan, the common part-time job that international students will get is like teaching English. That can be like tutoring as well. It can be private or like at English school here around like in Japan, I mean, or in Tokyo. So most of the time, like international students do that kind of part-time job. But also, there are a lot of places that are very like foreign friendly, where like they will allow like international students to work with like limited um, Japanese ability. If they can speak very little, they can like still work in like places like, for example, like restaurants or like fast food places. I think those I used to do like uh, working at like McDonald's as well, and those kind of like job you don't really need Japanese, but it will help your Japanese improve a lot. When I started doing like restaurant by part-time jobs or baito, my Japanese improved so much, and I learned so much about the culture and the life here in Japan, which I really recommend if like you come to Japan and would like to study here. I think having part-time job experience will be really great for you to learn the culture and make the most out of your experience here. Yeah, that's my question. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. So it is important that to make sure that if you want to do part-time job in Japan, you will have to apply for permission. So only if you receive the permission that you can do part-time job. And also for international student, you can only do up to 28 hours per week. This is very important. Okay, so we are also receiving other questions, but due to time limitation, it is difficult for us to answer all the questions, but I will just quickly answer one. I think this is to Sophia University, to the admissions office. So we got questions about like what scores for the GPAs or that they need for entering the universities. Well, we do not set any minimum GPA scores, or we do not set any minimum standardized test score for our applicants. So just make sure, it is very important because for our English top programs, the admission is done by document screening. So all the materials that you provide are very important. So even if you have a very high score or very high school performance, but please make sure that you will have to get prepared with all other materials like you're writing essays. This is very important. So if you're thinking to apply for Sophia, make sure to get everything well prepared.